So we're live right now.
Yep, there's your notification.
That was it?
Yeah.
Well, okay, but we'll get started. All right, we're calling this meeting to order. Everybody's here, so that's good. And this is where we open the open forum. So if anyone has anything that they'd like to address the council for, this is the time to do that. And we ask that if you do want to, you can come up to one of the microphones and identify yourself. Does anybody want to do that? Everybody's on the agenda? Or just here for fun? All right, hearing no one, we'll close the open forum and move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda has typical 3 things. Unless you want to pull something for discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, so we're moving right along. So we got some logistical things we've got to do today. And the first part is a road vacation. So if you go to the, oh, no, not yet. The, it's close. So if you go to the Berglund Everett vacation that we have here, we're talking about the Republic right-of-way that is currently unused, and we don't have any real plans to use it. That is located kind of behind the, or to the south of the county's garages, south and east of the county's garages. So the Planning and Zoning Commission, unless Tim, you want to have anything you want to say about
Planning and
this?
zoning doesn't deal with this.
Oh, this is a hearing. This is the hearing right now.
Yeah, so
This is it.
here we go.
Yeah, so this is the hearing right now. So it looks like there are no properties that could be or would be best serviced by that connection.
That's probably half of the
And
or half of the street. It's probably already been vacated.
yeah, I don't know if there's anything else we need to say about that. Does anybody have any questions about this particular request or resolution?
Yeah, to the east, you see a continuation of that right-of-way, but it's only half. Its portion of that already been vacated.
Yeah, the south half was vacated, and you can see that single-family home was built on that lot.
Mhm.
Yep.
I'm not sure when that was done. Nobody asked us to
Good job, Tyson.
to vacate that other piece, which is why it's not included. But
Are you representing this one too?
it's probably the exact same situation. We don't think
Yeah,
it's-
and if it was vacated, it would have reverted to the county, and the county,
yeah, it makes absolutely no difference.
yeah.
So
You know, I read the resolution. There needs to be a change to the resolution because the title to it has.
yeah, the title should just say 6th Street.
13th and 14th Avenue, and, yeah.
I think we got everything
Otherwise, I would
else.
make a motion to approve the request for the vacation of this right-of-way.
So that's a
Before you do
motion.
that,
Oh, wait. So we're
so is this a public hearing or what's the process right now?
Yep, it's a public hearing.
Okay, so we should open the public hearing, call for public comments, and then close the public hearing before you take a motion.
okay.
Ready to go.
So there was a motion on the floor. So just
I'll-
don't
I'll-
second.
I'll hold off.
You're going to withhold. Okay, so we withdrew the motion. So then, since this is a public hearing on this vacation of this right-of-way, then we will open to public comment. Is there anybody who wants to make any public comment? This is where you would come. Anybody else would come and make comment. And identify yourself, just like we did, like I said, for public forum, and then we can go from there.
Thank you. I'm Tyson Smith. I'm the attorney for Larry Larson and Kathy Everett.
Could you speak up? I can't hear you.
I'm the attorney for Larry Larson and Kathy Everett. I just wanted to point out, I think this is a very sensible vacation, given the surrounding buildings. The LEC's on one side, the highway garage is the other side. It's, I think, impossible if this is ever going to be used for anything else. The very simple result of a vacation is you divide this this public right-of-way in half, and half the street gets added to the property on either side. I don't know if there's any question about that, so seems to me to be a very simple, straightforward process. I have a copy of a survey that the Berglund's obtained, if you guys want it for your record. It's not particularly, it's just shows the survey of their lot and what lots 11 through 16 show. And
I've seen it. I think one use is if people look at this, the aerial photography and where the property lines and the buildings are, it's very misleading.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the lines is just blatantly misplaced, and
Yeah.
the attorney's
so
like-
if anybody had any issues with that, which is not actually related to this request, I think the survey helps with that. Otherwise,
Attorneys like to say that the GIS map stands for get it surveyed.
Yeah.
And this is exactly why, and you can see when you're looking at the outline of the garage, so
Yep.
that's all I have to say.
And so this is, you know, in the resolution here, it shows that that there was no objection from landowners abutting.
no, actually, this was some time ago now. It was August, I think, when we received petitions, separate petitions from both of the adjacent landowners, which is good news because then you were able to establish the adequacy of those petitions since 100% of the affected property owners had actually asked you to do this. And that's when we set this public hearing in October.
So 100%,
Yes, two for two.
2 for 2. 2 for 2. Okay, so is there anything else that anyone would like to say? Is there, so that's what you said, your part? Yep, so come up, identify yourself, same rules apply, and then go for it.
I'm Julie Berglund. And my husband Cliff. We own the one property that we're talking about.
Okay.
And the question I have is, once this, if it gets voted yes, that they're going to vacate it, so then do I get something in writing from you guys saying that 33 feet is mine?
We'll actually send something to the county recorder's office that
Okay.
establishes the vacation,
Okay,
and it'll become part of your deed.
okay.
Is that the resolution that's sent to the recorder's office, or is there some different document?
I think there's some sort of declaration that we make to them, but we'll sort that out. We did one a year ago.
Yep.
Typically, a notice of completion gets recorded with the county recorder's office.
Okay.
But that'll be added to the deed for your property then.
Okay.
Yeah, so then it'll basically, it won't be a survey. but
We won't
the-
do any survey work. Once the issue is dealt with at the council, then we'll submit some paperwork to the county, and that'll be it. We won't do anything else.
And then I can have a surveyor come and do the 33 feet if I choose.
You sure could.
Mhm. Yep. And then they'll have all of the paperwork that they need to draw their lines.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
So that was it?
What?
That was it?
Yeah.
Okay,
That
good.
was it.
Any other public comment on this, this vacation? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing on this. And then move on to.
I will make a motion to approve the resolution for vacation of this street right away.
Okay, so there's a motion for resolution 2018-21 with the adjustment to the title, is that correct? Because didn't you say the title
Yep.
should just say
Say
6th
Sixth-
Avenue, or
Sixth
6th
Street.
Street? Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
there's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? Just like to point out that, you know, when we do these vacations, I think it's really important to have 100% of the, you know, the landowners saying that this is what we're talking about. And this property, I don't think really brings up any major conflicts of interest because it's right there. There's not much going on in that area, and it's not going to be able to be serviced by a road anyway. So, anything else? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, resolution 2018-21 carries. Did we do that right, Chris?
I think so. I don't have any of the paperwork, so I haven't seen it. So I assume so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
we'll
your
go with that.
resolution, so,
Okay, good.
yep.
Great, so we'll go with that. All right, so we're gonna move right along. So, one down. We have a couple of variance requests on the docket, and of two of them require, that are talking about different zones and different variance types and things like that. So the first one, we'll go on that. So Ann and Sarah Hamilton are looking to build a narrow residence on a small lot. And this one is located up in the Creechville area, right off of 5th Avenue West. And, right there. And they're looking for a variance of, is it just a foot off of the necessary width?
They have multiple
25 feet.
issues that they're getting variances for.
Lot size.
The lot
width-
size is
the
slightly
width
under
of the-
10,000 square feet. The lot depth is less than the required 120 feet. And the structure that they're building is 16 feet wide, and we require 17 for residences, and that's the three issues that the planning commission took up.
So those are the things we're talking about then.
So why the 17 feet? What's the significance?
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly the question that we asked at the planning commission, and Tim answered it for us.
It goes back a lot of years, and it was put in place to make sure that somebody didn't bring in a mobile home RV of some sort and try to put that down. And the idea was if it was wider than 16 feet, then it was okay. So, I mean, probably antiquated, thinking in these days, but that's what the ordinance says.
I think we need to take a look at that anyway, because we're talking, I've been hearing from a lot of people about how they really want to start building smaller units on their properties, and, not quite tiny homes, but smaller homes. And I think that that's
And the
something-
planning commission did have a discussion about not just that issue, but lot sizes, lot widths, and I'll talk about that after we deal with this, because I think it's really a different issue.
It is.
Yeah, but
Yeah, and I
doesn't
would,
really affect this property.
I would love to have the commission talk about that. I think that it's a great timely conversation. So anyway, so we're looking at all these these three different variances for this construction, and the commission found that that of the five findings, it is in line with all of them, and they voted 5-0 to approve this request. So, anything else you have to add?
Well,
to
just
that?
to go back, you recall that this was before the council a few months ago with a rezoning request. This property, in fact, the adjacent properties are still within the
Park?
the recreation district, yes. And we rezoned this parcel. We've now considered that we want to bring the remaining parcels into the residential district too, and are going to have that continued, work done at the planning commission. But this obviously stands alone because we've dealt with the rezoning by itself. Now we're receiving a request to actually develop the property, since it's in the residential district, with a residence that doesn't meet the width requirement, but the lot also doesn't meet the minimum square footage requirement nor the depth requirement. So in order to develop this lot, which all the lots in this area in Creechville have homes and structures on them, and it doesn't seem reasonable that we wouldn't want to see a structure built on this home. It's an opportunity to, again, take a lot that has sewer and water service, make it available for somebody, and Anna and Sarah are trying to do this to make it affordable for local families or individuals to be able to buy something, and the planning commission felt that this was completely consistent with what we're trying to do and the intent of the ordinance. So that's why I think you see the 5-0 vote.
Is the small cabin going to stay on the lot then as well, Tim, that's already there? Did they say?
There was no requirement that be removed. I don't know if it's going to stay or not.
I think they were going to remove it, but that wasn't part of the
It wouldn't
application.
make sense.
Okay.
So this is interesting to me, because then this, I believe if we do agree if we pass this, then this does set a certain amount, a very slim precedent, but it does set precedent for
See
narrow.
what you're doing there.
I see, yeah, see,
Yeah.
very slim precedent.
Well, I think it also, when you look at the lot size, and actually when it came up for sale, I went to look at it.
Mhm.
You know, you don't find something that cheap within the city that already has sewer and water and different things, so I went to look, but would want a home bigger than what Anna and Sarah are looking at, and so it's kind of a different size, different spot. You know, I think when we do this, I know we can set a precedent, but I also think you have to take it case by case,
Oh, of
looking
course we
at
have
what
to
we're
take it.
looking at.
Yeah.
I
So,
mean, we're not making any more lots, and if we do,
No.
if we do make lots, they're gonna be a standard size, they're not gonna be funny little weird
Yeah,
shapes like
this is
this.
very
Well,
quirky shape.
Maybe kind of funny little shapes.
Yeah,
Well, they could be funny shapes, but they're gonna be a certain square footage, right?
You know,
might.
I wouldn't worry
Well,
about what we're going to
let's
do in the
not worry
future.
about
Let's
that.
just talk about this one.
Yeah, so this one is an existing lot. It's substandard for what we normally work with, so it seems reasonable to look at that so that it could be developed. Otherwise, nothing's gonna happen with it. And I think that, I like the creativity that's going into it. I think that that's what it's gonna do. And I think we need to take a look at things like this on a broader scale for the rest of the city. So,
Yeah, I think it's a very appropriate use of that lot. It just makes sense to scale the house size down with a lot too. And
yeah, so, so is there any other conversation about this? Anything else you guys want to consider? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion for resolution 2018-19.
I'd make a motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second for that
I'll
one?
second.
Motion and a second. So we've got a motion and a second for resolution 2018-19. Any further discussion?
I disagree with everybody. I think it's great that Anna and Sarah are going after some infill lots and trying to find opportunities for housing for folks. It's great.
You just agree. I thought
I
you said
agree.
you disagree.
I agree.
That's what I heard too.
You just agree with, okay, good. For a second there, I was a little nervous. Like, I think we have to have a conversation about what it means to agree. Okay, anything else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, so we're moving right along. I believe that you guys want to come up and introduce yourselves and such. The last variance request we have is height variance for the downtown waterfront zone. The request is for 1.5 feet over the maximum allowed height of 30 feet with the structure. There was quite a bit of conversation, it seemed, at the commission about it, and I've I've heard about it around town too. Had lots of people talk to me about it, and so I'm wondering if you'd like to point out any of the conversation, if we want to, have a summary of what the building is and such. I believe that pretty much everybody's seen your plans, because you
Yeah, met with most everybody to,
yeah. So that's where we're at. I don't know if Tim, if you have anything else you want to mention about it, or
Well, I mean, I think it's good to just point out that we did have a lengthy conversation about the proposal and the request. And, we did have one member that, voted against the request. But I think generally the planning commission felt that what the applicant was proposing for this site was very appropriate. That their work with their neighbors was, the reason why they were requesting the variance is because they were narrowing the building structure to accommodate, making sure that there was an adequate space between the buildings so that there wouldn't be moisture problems, which they had the right to build up to their property lines, and chose not to do that in respect for their neighbors, and the fact that their buildings are built right up to the property line or very close to the property lines. And they very well could have, suffered from moisture problems with doing that. And so they narrowed the building up, and in order to accomplish what they needed to do to make the, economics viable, they needed to go to a third story, and the third story then brought it over that 30-foot height. And they even tried to make some adjustments to the heights of the various floors, and working with that, they still needed a variance of 1.5 feet in order to accomplish that. We just approved the amendment to the zoning ordinance that requires that the main floor doesn't allow lodging on the first floor. The planning commission made it one condition of the recommendation is that the first floor had to be used for a retail service or other type of commercial use, not lodging. So making it absolutely clear to the applicant that lodging was not an acceptable use and would be part of the terms of the agreement.
Yeah. Anybody else have any questions for these guys about what we're up against here?
So I've talked to David a bit, and I guess I am a little bit confused on what exactly is getting built, because in the plan, or in the letter that we have, there's height requirements, or not requirements, but they're call out for heights for each of the floors, and talking about in the plan, or in the letter that we have,
Hey, Chris, what happened to your mute?
requirements, or not requirements, but they're call out for heights for each of the floors, and talking that's about. what takes them so long.
Eric, did you get it?
Sorry about that.
That's funny.
So yeah, I guess what my question is where things are at now. I know that we talked, and then I did talk. You didn't know exactly what kind of measures were in place or sorts of framing and types of things. Okay, so this is different than what's in the variance letter, though, because in the variance letter, you've got it at,
Well, it's 9 feet on the second floor, 8.6 on the third, and
you've got 9'6" on the main retail level.
that's at the bottom of the joist, 1.5-foot joist. It still is 11 feet. It was going to be we wanted 11 feet clear, if you go above the joist.
The standard height for the new retail space in today's marketplace is 14 feet to the bottom of the joist. I have reduced this down to 9'6".
Right. But if you add 1.5 feet to that, you're 11. And the way she's done this, it's showing 11 feet. We have squeezed this thing and continue to squeeze it. And if you look at that, it's basically, and I explained in the planning commission, that we're going to have a 11-foot floor height, ceiling height on the first floor. We can't go any lower than that. Just can't.
Okay.
Well, I'm kind of confused now.
Because the plans that she sent me show a 9 foot. It shows, because it's based on what I have, what the plan that I got sent after I talked to her, because based on this, we had 9'6" as our ceiling height. We had, on the first level, we had 9 foot for the next level, and then you dropped the top level down to 8'6". And the issue was that the framing, the way it was constructed, had a 16-inch floor joist on the main level, a 16-inch floor joist on the next level, and I think it was a 24-inch roof truss. And what I had explained, based on looking at the drawings that I saw, what the way everything was broken up, that I thought it would be possible to potentially try and find, if you drop 4 inches off each one of those, just in the floor systems, you gain 8 inches. And if you drop from a 24-inch roof truss down to a 10 or a 12 inch
Yeah,
and
but
go
if
with
you-
a different.
So if you look at this, are you saying she can continue to squeeze even further
Well,
with that?
I guess this is just different than what I was presented with, is all I'm saying.
So I said, please send me what you have so
Yeah.
that I can talk to, I pass that out in the planning commission.
Okay.
And maybe just because I'm not an expert trying to write out that letter, I didn't quite get it right, but I was always under the understanding we were gonna have 11-foot ceiling height, because I thought it was 9.6 at the, see, I thought you had a 1.5 foot beam, right? You know how you have exposed beams, and then you have 9.6 at the bottom of the beam, and then you got another 1.5 foot that brings you up to 11. And maybe I just didn't explain it right,
Yeah.
but this will show you exactly what,
So
'cause I asked her
that's
to
what
give
you're.
it a design. And
Yeah.
I said, and that's,
Can you pass that around?
yeah, Pat, you can pass that around.
And that's what
she's-
we were explained at the planning commission.
Yeah, and she
I don't
just,
think
and
there's
that's,
anything
I
different than that.
explained
No,
that.
I think it was different than that. I think you said it was an 11-foot
It's gonna be 11 foot,
floor on the first floor.
first floor, that's right.
And now if it's 11 foot to the top of the joist
No,
instead of
it's
the
a,
bottom of the joist.
it's 11-foot ceiling height
Yep.
on the first floor.
So where's this 1.5 foot? I mean, you're talking about 9.5 feet here to the bottom of the floor joists.
Which, I'm thinking of a beam, okay, a beam.
Mhm.
I just, and probably explained it wrong. I'm thinking of an exposed beam.
What's the beam
9.6,
doing?
like, huh?
Is it decorative, or is it holding up
Well,
the second floor?
Well, probably
See,
holding
that's
up the
different,
second
'cause he's showing-
floor. When when you're looking at it, when you walk into a building, you see an exposed beam.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about,
And
and I think
the
that's
beams are 1.5 foot.
what I'm trying to piece together here is okay from the top of the beam now, which is at 11 feet.
There's 11 feet.
This is what he
When do we get to the second floor? How much space is that?
That's what he showed us.
Well,
Like the floor of floor 2 is how high above the top of the beam?
just look at that, Mike.
Yeah, so that if there's this is what I'm trying to understand. If she's programmed in a foot, which is the joists, she's saying the bottom of the joists are 11 feet.
I think that
That's what this drawing says. Not
That's not an
9'6".
exposed beam there.
But it's floor joists.
thickness of the.
What is that 1 foot that's shown on either of these plans?
That's the floor system.
That's the floor system.
Which sits on top of the joist.
I mean, it's called a joist right there. Did you want to see? Have you seen that? I'm just trying to figure out how we add up to 31 and a half. So, but this is saying no beams, 11 foot of clear
Right,
space.
eliminated the beam. Or the exposed beams on that plan.
So that doesn't match for me what it says in the letter at all.
Maybe I explained it wrong then, but I think if you look at this, I think it's pretty, she's saying there is no way to squeeze the floor system any further. I'm gonna have 11-foot ceiling on the first floor, I'm gonna have a 9-foot ceiling on the second floor, and I'm gonna have an 8.6 ceiling
Yeah.
on the third floor, and I explained that in the planning commission.
Yep, that's exactly the
11,
conversation that every
9,
planning commission.
8, 6.
That's just not what it says here.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to figure out.
So
What was
I
different
tried to
about that?
clarify it maybe in the
Yeah, I
planning
don't-
commission, but
I don't know if we were referring to the letter at all when we were looking at, because we were looking at the drawing.
I understand.
No,
what it says.
no.
To the bottom of the joist is 11.
Right, and if this
Then-
says it's 9.5,
Right,
This
but
is
if you,
the- this is
but
the-
if-
this is the
if
actual-
you
there's
look
your
at-
foot and a half,
This is the actual
right?
ceiling height.
Huh?
If you look
that's
over
the
on
foot and a half you're talking about.
If you look over on the side, then she
Yeah.
has the width of the, floor joist, I suppose, in. Because then over here we go to 12, 22, 31 and a half.
But she drew that for a 30-foot tall structure too. I mean, that's where the 9.5
she-
came from originally.
I don't know. I just told her to squeeze the floor systems as much as you can squeeze them to get the things that you got to put between the floor systems, and squeeze it as much as possible. But I need 11, 9, and 8, 6. She goes, I can't squeeze them anymore. I can't squeeze that floor system anymore.
And the 11, 9, and 8, 6, like you know, I totally understand, and I don't disagree that the floor system is going to take, you know, is going to take up a foot. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not arguing about that.
So just change that number.
I'm wondering where you got the 11, 9, and 8, 6 numbers. I know that you already made the statement that typical retail is 14.
Oh, it's,
It's 14 feet. My business is in a space that has an 8-foot ceiling. You know, I mean, it's not ideal, but it's what I have. And I understand that if you're building something, you're going to want to build what you want to build. So I'm just wondering where the rest of those numbers come from. You know, the 9 and the 8-6. And Anton, you could probably speak to this too because you have more building experience. But like, I don't even know how tall this ceiling is. I'm assuming this is an 8-foot ceiling.
Taller than that.
No, it's taller than that.
Yeah.
Probably 9.
9.
86, I think.
Reach up.
I can touch an 8-foot ceiling.
Yeah, and I got heels on. I mean, I'm 6 feet tall alone. I bet it's almost a 10.
No.
No? 9?
You could dunk a basketball at 10. That's how high a basketball hoop
No, I can't.
is. Either can I.
So you can touch an 8-foot ceiling. So this is higher than the 8-foot ceiling. We're starting it.
Well, I mean, I guess that's my own thing. Like, I think like the idea of like seeing something happen there, like, and again, like I think it's crucial to have retail space. Obviously, that's why the like planning commission is pushed to make sure that zone is used for it. I guess that's my biggest hang up right now is trying to figure out exactly what's supposed to happen or what's going to happen. I mean, because in my conversations, both with you and then in talking to the architect, and is where you know, like, here's this 18-inch height variance, basically saying I think you're going to probably come up against maybe, and it didn't, I guess not at the planning commission, it seemed to go fine, but the issue of the height, I mean, it's only a 1.5 feet in a 30-foot building. A 30-foot building is tall, but so I was trying to work with, you know, like, is there solutions? And, you know, and I asked the question, like, well, how is it built? And you're like, I don't know, right? Which makes sense. Why should you know, right? And that's why in my conversations, what's that?
That's why you hired people to do that.
Right. And so in my conversations then, and that's the only thing that I'm wondering is, I feel like in some of the conversations, in trying to like help make it so is, you know, I think what I had said was if it's a 2-inch variance because of something like that or whatever, if maybe it's not possible, maybe she already did squeeze things down so that is the best you can do, and it is an 18-inch variance, and that's what you're up against. But what I feel like is in the packet that we got prior to the planning commission meeting even, and in the conversations I understood, is that that we were able to shrink we were able to find the solution to the variance problem and find that in the way that the structure is built. And now it seems like if there's an 11-foot high ceiling in that first level, it's like it took the savings that we found in changing the structure, because she has joists drawn at 12 inches, and joists were originally 16 inches, 16 inches, and 24 inches. Now, if everything's coming at 12, then, you know, and maybe that's like digging way into it, but, I mean, I guess that's, you know, it's for as beneficial, I feel, as like to
Well, it
have
was
the
my-
commercial space,
it-
and maybe that's a miscommunication
It was
between
a-
you and your architect.
There was a miscommunication then because she and I always discussed 11-foot ceiling height in the first floor. I can't build this building and put 9, 8, 10-foot ceilings in commercial. Just go all over the United States and look at commercial. I'm telling you, most of it's 14 feet. I'm not knocking the bicycle shop, but I mean, if you go, I mean, you go look in a gallery and look how you go into a beautiful gallery, go into Severson's and look how high those ceilings are. I mean, you go to Minneapolis and start walking into these retail centers. Many of them are 14 and 15 foot high. Yeah. I mean, 11 is very substandard in retail today. That's like real substandard. Most people wouldn't even build 11-foot ceiling heights. You can't go lower than 11 feet. I mean, I truly think I've squeezed this thing and squeezed this thing.
Yeah.
And remember, the 18 inches is that little 500 square foot, unit in the back toward Highway 61. It's not sitting up on Wisconsin Street. That's another thing. It's not like, it's 3 floors straight up off Wisconsin. There's going to be a rooftop deck on the second level, kind of like the Mayhew building.
What are the square footage dimensions of the building that you're proposing, as far as foundation?
You've got a little less than 1,000 square feet on the first floor. You got about the same on the second floor, and then you've got 490 square feet or whatever on that back unit in the back.
Okay.
I have two questions that came to my mind, and I know you talked a little bit about parking, but especially with the Highway 61 redesign. David, have you looked at how that will affect?
Yeah,
That
I've been
area?
working with MDOT for over a year on
Okay,
where the curb cut's going to be, the size of the curb cut.
Because your property butts right straight up to the highway.
Yeah, so they've worked it out where the curb cut's not going to interfere with 2 parking spaces I have in the back, and I've been helping Jeremy with his parking lot, and we designed a parking lot for both buildings.
okay.
And we worked with Mike. I've talked to Mike a couple times about taking the northeast corner of Harbor Inn where the utility easement is and putting, if they don't relocate the utilities because of the highway reconstruction, is putting in 6 additional parking spaces there, impervious, kind of like impervious pavers, because it's just wasted space. There could be 6 more spaces right there over the utility easement, and then if he has to ever, for some reason, go in there and dig it up, you just take the pavers up and put them back down. There's 6 spaces being wasted right there.
Okay. My other question is heating source and fuel tanks and things. What
I'm going to
about-
bury my fuel tank. And I've talked to Sarah at the coffee shop. She ought to do the same thing. Hers is on our property right now because they've built up to the property line. But I said, you can bury those tanks. The whole goal of taking Java Harbor in this building is to create kind of a real unique block. And if we all work together, we could create something kind of special down there. And if you look at that parking lot, it looks terrible. It's because there's standing water in there. So, I've had a number of discussions with Mike about that, and MDOT and Minnesota Pollution Control. I've been working with them for over a year. They're going to come in and take up that parking lot and clean up the soils. And then we're going to put the parking lot back down. But when you put the parking lot back down, you got to drain the water off of it because it does not drain right now. So I've been working with an engineer out of Duluth trying to figure out how to solve that drainage problem so that when people look at the buildings from behind, they ought to look very nice from the rear just like from the front, because look at all the people that go down Highway 61. It doesn't look very good back there.
So having buried tanks meets fire code and all that stuff?
I'm not an expert,
Yes.
but I understand that to be the case.
Okay,
10 feet from a property line, 10 feet from a structure.
okay. Because we have some other areas in town where we're not following, so I just wanted, that was a real concern of mine. Thank you. That was my questions.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns that people have?
Tim, you had a nay vote on the planning and zoning. What was the issue there? Do you know?
I wouldn't say I know specifically what the issue was, just
Okay.
that there was concern that this could cause future problems and future issues. We did issue a variance a number of years back for the East Bay to put some air conditioning units on top of their roof after they had built their unit. And, you know, I think they went, again, foot and a half, 2 feet, wasn't very much, but it was after the fact, and required a variance, and that variance was granted by the city. And I think, you know, with what we're talking about here, I think the planning commission felt that the issues of view obstruction, you know, really probably weren't going to come into play very much in this. You know, the Harbor Inn is already 27, 28 feet high, and this structure is only 20 feet wide, and if you kind of go uphill from behind that, there really isn't much that's there that, you
Nope.
know.
I live right up from
Yeah.
it. I live up the
I
street.
mean, and again, it's only a 20-foot, and it's a small third story, you know, third floor. It's not like it's, you know, a big swath covering sideways. So,
Okay. No, I like the work that you did. I appreciate the work that you put into giving us the information. I know you and I didn't meet, communicated through email.
Right.
But I really appreciate everything that went into this, because it gave me a chance to really look at things without having to go out
Right.
and look at things. So I think it was very well put together and presented for us. And actually, it follows what we just asked the planning and zoning to put in place, you know, retail on the bottom floor, and then above that, it fits. I think it's a beautiful design, and I also think that something like this would be nice, and maybe it would encourage others to improve and update the downtown area, because I think some of our buildings really don't look in the best condition. And I think this would add a lot, and maybe inspire others to move forward with some updating.
Anything else?
I don't have that drawing, and I'd love a copy
Oh,
of it.
we passed it around during planning commission.
Would
but
you
I'll
mind
give you-
emailing it to me?
Yeah.
Because I'd love to add it to your application.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
I would like to thank you for putting so much thought into it as well. I think that the structure, you know, I obviously architecture renderings are not the most effective way of telling what the finished product is going to look
Sure,
like, but
sure.
but I do think that you took some time to take a look at what other properties in the downtown area look like, and are doing your due diligence to serve the areas that are immediately adjacent to that property, and also to make the most of that property. I mean, I think that it's a weird little property, and I think that, you know, a building like this would be a really, really great addition to that, and I think that you'll have a great deal of success with it when you build it. The thing that I struggle with is the, you know, there had to have been some wisdom in the past of having the 30-foot limit put on the waterfront, and I don't foresee there being a mad rush of people putting in variances to go above 30 feet with construction in the downtown waterfront zone. But I also think that the view is a public resource, and I appreciate the efforts to provide the viewscape, but people look at the harbor from many different angles, and I understand that the Harbor Inn is 28 feet tall, and, you know, the space in there right now, there's not really much in there right now. You know, Job Moose is not a tall property either. So I still struggle with that. I still struggle with the 30-foot height requirement, because I believe that it's there for a reason, and I think that that's really a useful thing for preserving the view of the harbor. Now, because I know it's 35 once you get into the residential zone, right?
Across the street.
Yeah, right across the
street. So if we view that the 30-foot is something that we can provide variance for, then I think that it would be a conversation for the Planning and Zoning Commission to take up to see whether or not the 30 is even applicable. And so that's where I go with this. And And I don't know. I don't know what the community would think about that, and I don't know what this planning and zoning commission would think about that. But those are the things I struggle with as far as viewscape and height requirements. Is that if we have height requirements in place, then if they're not where we want the height of the buildings to be, then we should consider changing them.
What is the height of the rooftop bar?
At the tavern,
At the tavern?
30, I think.
it's just under 30, I would think.
The bar itself, is
Like
that?
the top of
The
it.
top of that.
And then-
yeah. It's
Then
also
the-
2 stories.
And then the back of Mayhew, I've got a 3-story structure back there.
That's right at 30 feet.
And but the thing that I explained in the planning commission, I think I've explained to everybody here, is the reason for variance ordinances all over the country is so that you don't set precedents and that you look at everything on a case-by-case basis. And here I am trying to shrink my building because of my concern for my neighbors, and it's created, in my opinion, a hardship. And I just feel that because of that, I don't think you're setting precedents by allowing this, because you look at everything on a case-by-case basis. If everybody just came in and just said, hey, I want to raise my property 18 inches. Well, why do you want to raise your property 18 inches? Where's the hardship?
I would supplement that and add that I'm fairly certain the ordinance says that prior variances are not a factor to be considered. And the reason I know that is because I wanted to talk all about East Bay in this ordinance, but I read that paragraph and said, got to come out, we can't argue that. And the second thing I think is really important is this is a very difficult site. You have a developer who's got a reasonable proposal to do something with a difficult site. We'd like to see, I as a resident of this community would like to see something happen with that space, and it's tough to find people that want to put the money into putting a structure up given just how expensive it is to build things in this community. It's a fact of living up here.
You're saying what I think, Tyson, and I have to look when I read this. I've talked to people who have met with you. I know you've done more than your homework. You sound like a stellar landowner and tenant, and you're the type of person on paper, I haven't met you before, so you're the type of person that I think I would want to do business with if this is something like this for the city. If this passes, my only thought would be, don't let me down. Well,
pressure.
that's just being honest.
Throwing the-
He's done his work, obviously. If he's talked to the MPCA and other things, MnDOT, you're looking at this. It's not a fly-by-night, I'm just going to see what I can get by with and throw it up. I think he's done the work. So I would make a motion that we approve Resolution 2018-20.
Okay, there's a motion.
I'll
Is there a
second that.
second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just want to go back to your earlier comment about, the 30-foot height, limitation in the downtown district, and maybe give a little historical perspective. And, I know a lot of conversation has been had over the years about, tall buildings in downtown and the impact that they have on the view shed. And I think that's one of the reasons why we see a 30-foot height restriction in the downtown area, is because the potential impact a taller building can have on a significant view shed. And it's really based on location and how that building might be situated that could obstruct a view. And I think when the planning commission considered this, they did consider that view shed, and that I think was a relevant part of the conversation and the vote on the approval, is that the impact of the view shed was relatively minimal, and that if it had been more significant than that, I think that there might have been some different conversations.
Anything else?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the only other thing I'd say is too is, the line of sight stuff from straight north is not really the only consideration.
Yeah, I tried to
I
look
mean,
at the words.
that, you know, if you move from instead of 12 o'clock noon going straight over to 11 o'clock, I mean, that's Voyager sitting there, right? And maybe they're not looking across, and maybe it's possible that the harbor already blocks that view, or any view of downtown. But yeah, I guess that's my only. I kind of felt that. I guess my really only hesitancy is that I thought that we kind of, based on conversations, that I thought that there was like a solution that had been made that based on, again, what's written and what I had gotten sent to me for drawings and elevations, that it was more or less resolved and it wasn't necessary. And I think it was surprising to hear that it's not.
And I think you see this, that, you know, the way, I asked her to please send that so everybody could understand it better.
Yeah. The
I
most
mean, if you
recent
think
one.
you can squeeze that floor system further, you know, let me know. But
No,
I think we squeezed it about as far as we
No,
can squeeze it.
No, I agree. I mean, but that's, yeah, that's not my point. My point is that you had it differently, and I'm not, and again, maybe it's miscommunication between you and your architect, but the way that it was presented to us based on what is written in the variance application of, here's what we're doing, we're already making these, we're making, you know, we want 14, so we're going to 9.6. We should have 9, but we're gonna go to 8.6 up top. These are things that you're making, which is kind of what you're supposed to do, is to try and minimize the impacts, and you did that. And the question then was, what else is there, what other options are there to look at that? And that is, like, how is it built? And, you know, I know that the drawings as they came in, when this variance was brought in and when we got the information, that those were listed out as they're spelled out in the form that we have in front of us here, and that the way that it was built in such a way that allowed for not 12 inches for a floor joist, but 16 inches for a floor joist, and not 12 inches for the next one, but for 16 inches, and not for 12 inches on the roof, but for 24 inches on the roof, which all of those things take that away. And I'm not I guess not trying to split hairs, but I guess it seems to me, and I'm not saying, and it's probably more than likely miscommunication between you and your architect, but the information that we have in front of us, and what to me seems like a resolution to the problem of we needing 18 inches, it's like as soon as that was solved, then all of a sudden the building downstairs on the main level grew by the number of inches that we were able to
But
save.
that's not correct, though. It's
I mean,
always been 11 feet
Okay.
on the ground level. Always.
Okay.
I just didn't maybe explain it correct, because I thought when I said 9.6, I had a 1.5 foot exposed beam, exposed beam.
Yeah.
And
so
it's
then you're measuring from the
9.6.
bottom of the.
That's
of the
how I
feet instead of
get
the
to
ceiling.
11, and I guess I'm thinking, and I put Joyce, and I guess Joyce is not, because I don't understand all the terminology, but I've always thought that was a 1.5 foot exposed beam, and I'm at 9 feet at the bottom of the beam. I guess I should have said exposed beam instead of Joyce. But I'm not trying to pull any wool over anybody's eyes here, honest to God.
Well, I mean, you showed us. You showed us what your plans are,
And-
with the 11.
You got to do 11-foot ceiling heights, Anton. I mean, you just can't do 9.5 foot ceiling
No,
heights and
I-
build a building like this.
Maybe.
It's just
I mean, that's-
suicidal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's all I'm saying, is that the plan that I got from the architect shows a 9.5 foot ceiling. And so I don't know, I don't have a commercial building I've never built a commercial building, right? But all I have is the information that I had prior to finding out that it was not now 9.5 feet, but it was 11 feet.
She has always told me it was 11-foot ceiling height.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what she sent you.
Drawing?
I mean, the drawing she sent me after we had a conversation on how to alternate or change the framing design on the project shows 9.5 foot
Now, did
ceilings.
she try to shrink it to 9.5? Because it's always been 11.
Did that design, I mean, I'm asking you to remember all kinds of fun stuff. If that design had 9.5 foot ceilings, but then allowed for a 16-inch floor joist, you guys are saying the same thing.
It's the same drawing as the most recent one. The numbers just changed 9'6" for the first level instead of 11, and then everything reflected it, and it ended at 30.
Yeah. I mean,
She's always told me we've had 11-foot ceiling heights.
again,
So I don't know,
But
did the
that-
9.6 because
But if
she
you-
talked to you and then she sent you
But-
something that she was trying to accommodate you to shrink the building? Is that how it ended up?
Well, but
You
if-
getting a 9.6 ceiling height?
I don't know, but if you had an 11-foot ceiling, I always planned for downstairs, and you had at one point 16-inch floor trusses, 16-inch floor trusses, and 24-inch roof truss, you don't need an 18-inch variance, you need much larger than that. So that the only way that it got to be an 18-inch variance and remained an 18-inch variance was because of the changes that we made to try and find a solution to not having to need to get a variance. Right? Because if you always had an 11, I mean, you should have then needed
So
a 3 foot.
let me ask you this,
Based on the way that she.
Based on this, can you shrink the floor system any further?
It's not shrinking the floor system. She had the floor systems drawn as 16-inch floor trusses on both levels, right? And then a 24-inch roof truss on the top for insulation, is what she said. And, and I said, well, I don't think, based on looking at the actual floor plan of that, which I don't know if anybody else has seen the floor plan of that, there isn't large expanses. Your building is only 22 feet wide or something like that. Maybe it's a little more than that, I don't remember. But there's lots of party walls, there's all kinds of broken up space in there. And so what I had said is, I said, I'm not an engineer, you obviously are gonna have this engineered, but I said one opportunity for you to look at is to look at the changing, if you're planning on going with a 16-inch floor truss in both locations, which she said she was, and this thicker roof truss up top to make sure you can get your insulation values, and again, she's thinking it's Minnesota, you need to do that. And what I was saying is, well, in that opportunity, you could find a 12-inch product out there that would get you just as good as 24-inch. You just have to think differently than going with a standard truss and blown-in insulation. I was, again, trying to find opportunities to, how can we work around this? So if you had 24 inches in a roof truss, which isn't in the drawing that we have, and 16 inches in floor trusses, which aren't in the drawings that we have, if you put those things in there and you keep your 11-foot, your 8'6", and your 9-foot, then you actually would need to get a 3-foot variance, not an 18-inch variance. And the only reason it's still an 18-inch variance is because the suggestions that I offered with dropping everything down to 12 inches on the roof and on both of the floors saved you 18 inches. But by jumping from 9'6" on the main level, as presented both in your request and in the drawings that I got from your architect, it shows now 11 foot. So it took
Okay,
all
so-
the savings away that we made in changing the
Okay, so
structural
what
dynamics
you're-
of the building.
What it sounds like you're thinking is that I designed a building with 9'6" ceiling height.
I don't know if you did, but your
I did.
architect did. And it says
She
9'6" in
I
your.
got many a notes
plan.
between conversations with her and I about if I'm gonna have an exposed beam of 1.5 feet, and I'm gonna be at the bottom, and I'm 9'6" at the bottom of that beam or whatever exposed beam, at least I got 18 more inches, so I got 11 feet. I got 11 feet height.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine, I guess,
So then,
What's the other
told,
12 inches for?
but I told, what's that?
The next 12 inches that's in the drawing, what's that?
that's the structure. He's saying if there's the joists, which are every so often, and I explained that if you're going to a 12-inch from, you have a 16-inch probably engineered truss going in there, that you're gonna, instead of being 24 on center or whatever, you're gonna have to shrink. I mean, I was just trying to be helpful to how you can do this, because again, and obviously maybe I'm wrong, because I'm the only one that's bringing anything up about it and making probably a bigger deal than it is if there's support all the way around. But that's the only thing I'm trying to understand is why. I don't know, and maybe it is, but once I had the conversation, she was asking about what kind of insulation to use here and what kind of things to do here, and I was trying to give like my opinions on
And I'm the
projects.
one who asked Anton to call her. I said, please call my architect, collaborate with her, talk about floor systems, see what you can do to do all this, see if we can squeeze, or whatever.
And
I have always been under the full understanding that my ceiling height was gonna be 11 feet on the first floor. I would never build a $500,000 building or whatever it's gonna cost and put a 9'6" ceiling on the ground floor.
Sure.
And so then there must have been some huge miscommunication there.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm not
that's-
trying to pull something over
I'm not
anybody's
saying that.
eyes
I'm not
here.
saying that you are.
And
I mean, at all.
I would be more than happy to get her on the phone and.
No, that's
and-
all I'm trying to clarify, is that if there, I'm not saying you're doing anything, I'm not saying, and there was something probably between you guys in your conversation and the way that it's spelled out in the variance request, and that's all I'm trying to get at. Because prior to me offering suggestions on how to shrink it down with the way that it was originally designed, an 18-inch variance request isn't the number that it should have been. That's my whole
Because
point.
you thought it was a 9'6" ceiling height on the first floor.
And you're saying it's always been 11 foot.
It has
So if-
been.
Great, so if it's always been an 11-foot ceiling height, and you had 16-inch floor truss, 16-inch floor truss, 24-inch roof truss, then you don't need 18 inches, you need, because the only reason it's at an 18-inch variance right now is because of the recommendations I made
see
in
what you're
changing your
saying.
framing.
So then there's been huge communication then
Because you
between-
needed actually a 3-foot variance request.
I see
If you
what
would
you're
have,
saying.
if you would have built
I
it the
see
way
what
that
you're
you've said, your architect always had it originally drawn.
I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
So there's been a lot of miscommunication between she and I
Yeah.
on this, on that floor height. If you're saying that she has always told me 11 feet, and that's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand how 9'6" is what you put in your letter.
Because I thought I had an exposed beam, and I was 9'6" at the bottom of an 18-inch exposed beam. See,
But she
like if
called
you
it a
walk into
16-inch
Severson's and you see any of those
floor
exposed beams in there, they're like 18 inches high. The exposed beams, in the ceiling.
Yeah.
I understand
And
the
that
concept.
height, we know
I
what
don't
it's-
understand
So I
the
thought I
math.
was at 9, huh?
It's the math that I don't understand.
Well, if you're at 9'6" plus a foot and a half, right? If you're
But your architect wasn't calling for 18-inch beam.
You're saying
No, we were gonna have
16
exposed
16.
beam. We were gonna have an
Just
18-inch.
it's not putting it together here.
We were gonna have an
I know.
I understand it, the numbers don't seem to add up.
We were gonna have an 18-inch exposed beam for aesthetics, right? And when you're like the Severson Gallery,
Yeah, with the beam.
and I was thinking, okay, we got 9'6" at the bottom of that exposed beam, and then the beam's 18 inches.
I think it might be really useful to see some plans that have some more detail on them than that.
How much more do you need than that?
Well, we don't need any if they're okay with what you're asking for, because I think the conversation at the planning commission was all around that drawing more than what was in the letter. But what we're talking about now is different information than what the planning
Okay,
commission was
but
talking
no,
about.
the planning commission, I always said 11, that was real clear.
I thought so.
11 feet on the first floor, 9'6" on the second, and 8'6" on the third.
And to get that to be 30 to 1.5 feet tall, that must have come after Anton's conversation with your architect, because
No,
that's
no.
incorporating all the changes that
This
he
was
talked
passed
to her.
out in the planning commission.
Which must have been after
Which-
his conversation with your architect, because that's different
Yes.
than what you talked about before. I mean, that's showing 12-inch floor joists now.
Correct.
So no 18-inch, no 16-inch, 12-inch.
I
Like
see what you're
Anton
saying.
suggested, like Anton talked to your architect about.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So maybe a clarification of this would be to get a more detailed drawing of that, showing, what constitutes that free space, what constitutes the joist. And if we're talking about those 12 inches, I mean,
Well, you-
are we not talking about an 18-inch?
Well, we
Or
can't,
we are
we
not talking
can't
about a 20?
squeeze the floor system any further than that. I
Well,
think Anton
but
agreed with
she's
that.
showing a 1 foot
A what?
On the roof too, she's showing 1 foot there, and, you know, you're saying 2 feet. There seems to be a
What do
discrepancy.
you mean 2 feet on the roof? I'm not, what do you mean?
You were saying that there was gonna be a 2-foot joist or.
16, 16
I thought
feet
that,
forward.
not
16.
joist, see that, I get mixed up between joist and beams.
Well, it could be the same
It's
thing.
exposed beam that's,
That's the structural element that is,
like if you have an exposed beam in here that's going from there to there, but
Yep.
then the ceiling's 18 inches, you know, at the top of the
But then there's
beam.
not 12 more inches on that before the next floor. That is the next floor.
That it,
I mean, I don't think there's any misunderstanding about how that works.
so
I
do
think we
you
all
have
understand
12, don't you have a floor system up there, right?
that. Not a 12-inch thick floor
the
system.
floor is laid right on top of that beam or joist or whatever you wanna call it. I mean, isn't that right, Anton? There's nothing above that joist.
What
that-
David's saying is that, so that,
The joist will support the floor system. I think, you know, like the floor systems that I've seen in construction are.
That, the 12-inch.
well, I'm not
is-
saying that, I'm not engineering David's building for him. I'm just trying to find, again, looking at what I saw for floor plan, and I thought that, and I think I said to you and I said to your architect, it's like, well, this is probably gonna be a little bit more framing intensive for somebody to do, to have this engineered to be able to make work out if you, instead of just flying 16-inch floor trusses across, which would take an hour and a half, it's gonna take more time because there's point loads and there's things, I mean, it's all this stuff that I think about. But that, the joists running across the building, I think what David is saying is that if those, because they're undersized, aren't big enough to clear span from one side of the building to the other, that there would be intermediary beams that would pick up that load to span that, so it could potentially split it in, a beam would split that load in half from one outside wall to the other. And there could be 1, there could be 6, there could be whatever you want. But I guess, yeah, I mean,
There could be 0.
there could be 0.
Well, you know, we're not gonna design this building, obviously, and we're not
No. And
you
that-
know, qualified to do that. But I think what the issue is that we've seen some different information, and in order to provide the clarity, I think it would be worthwhile to see a drawing that's spelled out, rather than just showing the height there, what that constitutes. Because you're saying what you think it constitutes. I would like to see the architect saying that same thing, if that's in fact the case, and how you get to the 31 and a half feet.
Anton, what Tim is saying, he would like her to explain that a little more. Can you explain that any further?
Well,
Or what would she,
Yeah, that's not.
what
I
would
think
she
it'd be
explain?
useful to reconcile what you wrote in the letter with what's drawn on that paper. Maybe she can explain that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, but I thought I
Let's shrink
explained
it
it
to
well
30.
in the planning commission, that I needed 11 feet, needed,
Well, I don't think anybody at the planning commission took it to that level of detail, nor did they have any, you know, expertise to maybe take it to that level of detail. We looked at the drawings, you know.
my question to you is, to shrink it, am I gonna lose ceiling height?
In these,
You're
in
looking
these
at the
drawings
floor
it is
system.
on
I'll
924.
show him.
Am I gonna lose any ceiling height at all if I shrink the building?
no, because you're asking for,
11,
you're asking
9,
for 11, 9, and
6
8'6".
8'6".
Right.
Can I shrink it any further?
The floor joists, you're
No,
framing?
yeah,
You-
so I have 11 feet on the first floor,
Right.
9 feet on the second, and 8'6" on the third.
Right.
Is there any way to shrink the building any further? How much
you
more
could.
can you
You could-
squeeze the floor system?
You can't squeeze the floor systems. We already squeezed the floor systems.
Right. See, we've squeezed it as much as we can squeeze it.
Well, if you want 9'6" to the bottom of the joist, that's not what's drawn there.
Like when I say,
Come on, Anton, the one that you just showed.
Because if she's saying that
Like-
this is a 12-inch
It doesn't
joist.
like if you're, but it isn't that 9-foot ceiling height when you're standing in a room, right?
Right.
That is on the second floor and the
Right, on
third
the second
floor, but
floor.
on the first floor, you have 11 feet to the
So,
bottom of the joist,
What
which
date
is,
what date is that drawing? Because what Anton has, which doesn't need the variance, is 9'6" ceilings, and that's what she sent you on the drawing is 9/24.
And that reflects the original letter.
Of 9'6".
but that was with a different floor structure then.
No.
Well, it says the
was-
standard
it
height
was
for new
12
retail
12-inch
space is
on-
14
Well, it
feet.
had a
I reduced it to
9'6" ceiling
9'6".
height to the bottom of the joist. That's
Yes.
what it shows,
Yes.
not 11. That's what it does show there.
Well, that's what I say, this drawing doesn't seem to show that
No,
as,
that one's
it
different
shows
than
it
that
at
one.
11 feet to the bottom of the joist, but the joist, I mean,
Well, and I think
can't
that's the
tell.
only problem, is whatever the communication breakdown was between your architect and yourself is what my only hang-up here is, because, again, whatever, I
Well,
already
she
said
just
all
said
that
I was
stuff.
gonna have an exposed beam, the original plan, we'd have exposed beams on the first floor. They were gonna be 18 inches high.
So,
And so she said you'll be 9'6" at the bottom of those. But David, you got 18 more inches because you got an 18-inch beam running across your ceiling.
Exposed beams plus the floor
Exposed
structure.
beam.
yeah,
Plus
well,
the floor
we're
structure.
aware of that. I don't think that we're arguing about that. That, you know, yeah. So the plan that Anton has on his phone that was sent earlier, that
When
she was
they
talking
talked
about,
and she was trying to change.
That's
Yeah.
when everything's shrunk. All the floor joists and the roof trusses shrunk from what she had originally proposed down to
12.
12, 12, and 12, which is
And
what
30
is
feet.
reflected there, and at 30 feet.
So maybe you can take a look at that and tell us where that fits in. Was that not something that you
Did you-
approved?
And
Is that
maybe you
something
didn't,
that-
maybe, yeah, I have no idea
mean,
if
is
you
that-
got that,
where
but
does
that's
that-
what I got, and that's what I
Well,
was
but
like.
that's reflected in the original letter.
I agree.
And so if you do that math, then you need that 18-inch variance.
I'd like to make a motion to
So-
table this request with pending further information between David and his architect to resolve this issue. I mean, we can talk about it all night, and I don't think we're gonna resolve it.
No, and I
because
don't-
There seems to be a gap of some sort here. And-
Yeah,
think
I'll talk to her because, I mean, she and I have been real clear on 11 feet, so I don't know.
And then that makes sense, and the 18-inch variance is
I mean, we
great.
have been clear since day
I know.
1 on 11 feet.
So we have two motions at play here. So we need to deal with the
I
first
will
one.
withdraw my
No,
motion.
you can
You
leave
can
it.
suspend it.
Motion to table.
You need somebody to second his table, and then you can talk about that.
Okay, I'll second the motion to table it.
It'd be a motion to postpone too.
Yeah, well, postpone.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
And that takes precedence over the initial motion?
Correct.
Yeah, I just think that we've talked about it, we seem to have some miscommunication here, and I don't think we can resolve it to anybody's
Without any more
satisfaction tonight.
information.
Well, and I mean, I think it's awesome. I mean, I think it's a great project, and I mean, I think the only thing, it's, you know, that the visibility of this project is high, right? Not because of the height, but because of where it's at. And to me, I feel like it's my responsibility to make sure that, like, at least we have, it's clear and everything matches not only what the request has been, but that matches the information that we have in front, because
I probably should
We-
have had the architect write the help write that.
Well, I mean,
I didn't. I said, I need to ask her because, I mean, I'm telling you, she has told me so many times I've got 11-foot ceiling height. So I need to ask her, where is the breakdown?
Well, this also, like, if we table this, then that gives you time to, to gather the information that we need, and it gives us time to keep thinking about it, and that, I think that makes sense to do that until we can answer our questions. Because obviously there's concerns on the council about this. So we have a motion and a second to postpone this I don't even know what the ordinance, or the number.
Pending for, oh, yeah,
2018-20.
2018-20. Yeah, so that pending motion. Does anybody have any objections to us tabling this? Or anything else that they would like to say about that particular motion, about the motion for tabling?
Well, only that my expectation is that we get clarification of this with a drawing that represents what you're telling
I
us
need
or
to ask
what
her-
she's telling us.
I need to ask
that
her
is-
flat out, how did we, whatever you sent Anton, how did that all of a sudden become a 9'6" ceiling height?
Yeah,
You know,
whatever
that's
it takes,
what I gotta get
whatever
to
it
the
takes to
bottom of.
resolve that, and, you know.
I gotta get to the bottom of that.
Yeah.
I will never build a building, I'm just telling you right now, at 9'6" ceiling height and for retail. Just would not ever happen, ever. So
Yep.
I'm not trying to pull a fast one here, there's obviously
No, I
some
just-
huge miscommunication somewhere.
Well, let's
Well, I'm not
figure
trying
it
to-
This building's so expensive to build, it's just no way.
Well, and I want it
So-
to, I'd love to see it happen. I just want to make sure that that we have everything covered.
And I apologize for the way I wrote it, because obviously it didn't explain what I was thinking in my mind. I thought I had this exposed beam of 18 inches, and I was at 9'6" at the bottom when I'm standing in the room like this. I had this beam, and then I had another 18 inches of the beam that gets me to this flush ceiling height.
Well,
But
So
anyway.
we're looking for a final drawing and maybe a rewritten explanation?
Yeah.
Is that what we're seeking?
Maybe ask her to write it.
To clarify, because then that would go along with the application and be in the files, right?
And I think it might be useful for kind of a timeline here too of how the conversation has evolved, because that seems to be the real hang-up.
Right. That's what I would actually really like to see. That, you know, I want to see where the plan that Anton had, where that fits into our, you know, the evolution of the project, what the original plans looked like too, because I'm assuming the original plans were the ones that were included with the application for variance.
Well, they didn't
That
have
isn't
the,
even in here.
They were not.
they didn't have the.
You just had
I
the
guess
you just
the
had
way-
the renderings.
that's why I told Anton to call her, try to figure it out, you know, figure out a way
We
to.
have everything that was submitted.
Okay.
There was no
All right.
numbers on it.
That's fine.
It's just renderings.
Well, you know, and yeah, okay. So yes, that information would be awesome, and we appreciate you, you know, sticking with it and working with us on this. A lot of, yeah, we're being persnickety, and that's
Yeah.
our job. So, yeah. Anybody else have anything to say about the motion to postpone?
And this could come back at any time as soon as you have that information. So,
Yeah.
Just a function of me flying back up here, so I may have to wait till summer.
Well, it could be,
Well, it
Hang
can't
on a
wait
minute.
till summer.
What's
it
that?
could be
Yeah,
emailed
they
up,
got-
We're on the
right?
clock here.
They got 60 days.
And after this motion, I'll be
What's
recommending
60 days?
that you increase your 60-day total to 120 days. But that's all you get, and then you have to decide yes or no.
What do you mean now? Explain it.
They have
Variance
a
is-
timeline that
requires.
they can use to approve or deny the request. If they don't do it in time, then the request is automatically granted. They're not going to let that happen. So you're either coming back or withdrawing and refiling.
Or
We
Tyson
just-
has to
we-
represent you.
We just withdraw,
Or I suppose that
refile
is-
if we have to. Maybe we do
Well,
that. I
most
don't know,
likely that
so-
we'd actually just vote to decline it, and then you could refile it.
Yeah, so, yeah, unless you and I talk about it, but that's probably what we'll do. I mean, I don't want to fly back up here in December or whatever.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Might be nicer then than it is now.
Yeah.
Well, isn't
you
it?
don't have
I
to
mean,
swim
but they
to
couldn't
get
they
to
come
the-
back in 2 weeks? I mean,
Well, yeah, he
maybe
could,
David, maybe, but I mean, there's no reason that if it's just a matter of getting clarifications on drawings that.
yeah, that he would have to be here.
If you guys don't hold it against him and it's just me, I think that's fine.
Okay, then I'll.
Well, I
If-
think that
I'll
you've
talk
heard from most people on the council that we really dig your plan. Like it's
Yeah, I'm
like I'll be the first person to say I mean you did your homework and I love that. I love that you're designing something that will add to that space. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not the first.
Yeah,
but would be.
I have no issue if Tyson comes back with the information and answers it, there's no reason we can't move forward with it. So,
Okay.
that works for me. Or
Yeah, and
you
I'll have her explain it because
Send your
I mean,
architect.
I don't
Yeah, make her do
Yeah,
it.
make your
It's gonna be a more
architect.
expensive trip.
She needs to explain it for sure.
Okay, so any other discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of postponing the variance request? Respond by saying aye. Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so.
As I mentioned, now would be the appropriate time for you to formally extend the review period for an additional 60 days, just in case.
How many days are we on right now?
I'm not sure.
Probably 60, close to.
I don't think we're
Well-
close to 60, but
45.
you know, you might not have more than 2 or 3 weeks left, and so it's just prudent.
The
Just
proposal,
to give yourself all the flexibility, and he gives you more
Okay.
time. He can.
so does it
much
go
time
from the
as he
date
likes.
he signed and paid?
It's when he
Application.
Okay.
Okay,
Applied it.
application was signed 9/6, it says $200 paid 9/7.
Yeah, so we're talking about, we've got 3 or 4 more weeks here. And if it happens in 3 or 4 more weeks, great. But just in case, you're here now, this seems like
I'd
the right
make a
time
motion
to do
to
it.
extend.
Okay, there's a motion to extend. You're
I'll
talking
second.
60 to 120. Motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? We intend to have this done before
Yes.
then. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. There.
Mike, you will need to provide the applicant written notice of that as well.
We'll be doing that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So we'll be looking forward to some additional information.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks.
We really
Okay.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, David.
Thanks for all your help with that, Chris.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're going to move on to council and staff reports. One of the things that I think, do you want to do this before or after staff reports when we talk about the 31st?
We're scheduling, we can talk about it anytime you want.
I can't make it.
So on the 31st, we have some stuff we need to do on the 31st. So at that meeting, so we have a couple of options. We can either schedule it for earlier in the day, or we can find a different day to do that meeting. Because there's a number of conflicts that people have on that.
I think a lot of us are going to be busy that evening.
Can we move it to the week before,
We can, that's one of our options. That's
24th?
pretty easy schedule-wise for everybody, I imagine, that, except for Tim, but we don't really expect him to be here. anyway.
I mean, I could do it earlier in the day on the 31st, but, you know, it is Halloween, and I
I'm expecting that agenda to be
have
pretty
an
full.
annual party that goes on at my house, you know. I think Mike even has one at his house.
And in town.
I have one at my house, too.
Yeah.
Which
We
is
have-
perfect, because then none of us can, like, get that together
right.
in the same spot.
Well, I don't have my invite to any of the parties.
We don't
And
actually
everybody in
send
town
invites,
is
it's whoever
welcome at
shows
our
up with their
house.
kids and
Yeah. I'm much less
If you come
choosy at my
trick-or-treating
house.
by, you can always, you know, partake.
costumes. That's cool, or whatever.
Usually just
No,
end up at
definitely
Dietrich Palmer's,
So-
they give a
So-
full size.
Earlier in the day, the week before, or something like the 30th. Any of those would be options.
Earlier in the day is not good for me.
Can we do the week before?
I would not be there on the 24th.
We have to do it on a Wednesday?
Don't have to do it on a Wednesday.
I could do it on the 25th, but
I can't do it on the 25th.
I could do it on the 30th.
Oh, I can do it on the 30th.
I could possibly do it on the 30th. Probably.
Works for me.
30th is okay, I think.
Okay, so we'll just do 6:30 on the 30th?
Yeah, and I may or may not be there. So I'll let you know as soon as I know.
Well, we can always change the date again if we need to. So, yeah, when we hear from Jay, we'll let people know whether we want to discuss a backup plan.
Okay. All right, so with that said, we're going to move on to council staff reports.
What time are we doing it?
6:30.
6:30.
Okay.
So, Tim, you're up.
Yeah, to just continue on with the additional conversation we had at the Planning Commission, you know, we talked about a couple of things. One, going back to that Creechville property, we talked about initiating a rezoning for all of those parcels that fall within that recreation district to put them into the R1 zone district. and to begin a process to make that happen. So that's one item. The other is that, with regard to this whole issue of lodging on the first floor in the downtown district, there are still planning commission members that don't feel that that goes far enough and want to open up further conversation about the whole option of using conditional use as an option for lodging on that first floor. We've asked Mike to come back with language to our next meeting that we can look at and maybe decide that we want to put out for public hearing. So we're still thinking about that. I think the idea with the action that we took was that it resolved the issue that was brought before us in kind of an immediate way, but it didn't necessarily take into consideration all the conversations that took place that kind of brought that to our light. So, so we're gonna keep working on that issue. We also talked about the ordinance in general and issues regarding lot size, lot width, square footage, this business of the structure width that, and we're going to be continuing to talk about that too in the future. So, we've got some work ahead of us. So,
Accessory dwelling units, since you're at it.
Yeah, definitely.
Talk about it.
well,
We're going to talk about everything in the zoning ordinance that is related to the affordable construction of housing in the city.
Good.
Yeah.
It's because we like just a really easy, quick project.
yeah, there were a lot of things thrown out, and I think what we really need to do is sit down with the ordinance and kind of look at, go through it and look at what might be relevant today or isn't relevant today that was relevant before, and there probably are quite a few other portions of the ordinance that would fall in that category. So,
Yeah.
so it'll open up a conversation that I'm sure.
When are you guys going to start that?
Pretty quick.
Well,
So what I brought up was-
how much time do we have to do that? How much time does Mike have to
Mike's
do that?
agenda's pretty full,
Yeah.
which, Mike's agenda is your agenda, so you can go ahead and put that to the top of the list if you want. But an alternative is we need more resources, so I'll be looking at options for getting some help with us looking through our ordinances and talking about housing as kind of a bigger topic. Let's just see what some ideas for that might look like, because I think that is a topic that deserves a chunk of resources.
Can we reach out to some of the organizations like Strong Towns and like some of those other like small developer groups that like look at that kind of look at antiquated oftentimes, like the cut and paste.
I mean, is there a specialist consultant that deals with this issue
I
out
don't know
there?
about that, but I just think
Possibly.
or like the resources that are,
The idea is, the resources are out there. It's not a question of is the information available. It's a question of do we have the time to pull it together and turn it into something. And we don't if we don't. If we keep working on the rest of the stuff we've got on the plate, we just don't. And this is something that seems like it ought to be brought into the fold. So we're just going to look at.
when you start filling your inbox with stuff, and you can disseminate it out to the planning commission.
Be great, but I actually think that the planning commission is going to appreciate some pre-digestion of that information,
Sure.
and I think we want some help with that.
There-
Mama birded a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably going to take a while to figure out what it is that we really want to address, and even if we were going to talk to somebody else about doing it, we'd have to at least provide some structure to that. So I
Right.
think we've got some work ahead of us just to get to that point.
I think that's great. I think that's awesome.
Another meeting we went to, Mike and I were at, Jay was at it too, was the Highway 61 MnDOT meeting last week, where we were talking about the phasing and staging of construction for the project, and there's some fairly significant decisions that, significant decisions needed to be made at that meeting that, basically gave MnDOT the direction in terms of how to how to phase and stage the construction to address the construction and closures and reroutes and, I mean, it was really a good discussion, but I think what came out of it is that there's going to be some real stresses to the community when that project goes on. One of the things that, that I wasn't aware of that got brought up is that this whole business of cleaning up the contaminated fuels, that's going to dig a huge pit extending from the front door of the cobblestone building all the way over to the into the parking lot at Harbor Inn is going to be a huge project, removing all the contaminated soils, replacing them with good soils, which absolutely means that the highway will be closed down for an extended period of time while that project is happening.
And how do the businesses in the cobblestone building and Dairy
Yes.
Queen, Harbor Inn, Java Moose, how do they all deal and operate?
Very difficultly, I think.
Cobblestone building, that's gonna be a real challenge, and that's, of course.
It's gonna be
MnDOT
right up-
and
right
the
up to
LPCA
their-
have an obligation to be able to answer that question for them. Everybody else, there'll be ways to continue to operate. But the block of street that's on won't be able to continue to carry traffic. So there won't be a plan where we keep Highway 61 open through its entirety. We'll have to route traffic around that block at least for some chunk of the project.
So we talked about possible reroute, of the traffic and, especially concerns about the truck traffic, because truck traffic won't be going through that downtown area. It's going to come up on Highway 7. MnDOT was suggesting that they use Highway 7, County Road, and then 8th Avenue West, and then continue out the highway.
Oh, you don't
It was-
want a big heavy truck coming
It's
down
not-
8th Avenue
It's not happening.
West.
It's not happening. We got that changed around.
Yep,
but,
we got that changed around. Of course, I sat through that with some irony, living on 5th Avenue West that was the Gunflint Trail and is at least as steep as 8th and not as nice and regularly had heavy truck traffic coming down it.
And sometimes not stopping.
Yeah, I mean, so the concern is about, the school and, even the talk about the trucks may have to go up around, up on the Gunflint and come back down on 5th to 7 and go out 7 to avoid having to go through the school zone. Construction is going to start in May of
Well,
2000.
July is when it will start. They'll let it in May.
2020 though. May of 2019 is when they will let the project, but most of the work in downtown Grand Marais is going to happen in 2020.
So there will be a meeting that MnDOT will host. It will likely be here, and it'll likely be on the 7th of November, where they'll be presenting this kind of, here's what's going on with their schedule. In between now and then, the steering committee will, yeah, that's going to be a busy day of meetings.
What is that tape?
That's a Wednesday with the Planning Commission and the Public Utilities Commission in here prior to MnDOT being in here. I hope nobody else is in here.
What did he say, November 7th?
Yeah.
November 7th, yeah.
So prior to that day, the steering committee will be getting together and looking at a list of suggestions that MnDOT has for what the community really needs to do itself to prepare for this project, which I think is a great idea.
I mean, it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to disrupt, the business community. I mean, it's going to disrupt the whole town in the sense that traffic is going to get rerouted. There's going to be people that are going to be driving who knows where that are trying to get to someplace that they can't get to.
Well, and at the same time, we will have the boat landing being redone, so the already compromised parking and what will happen out at Coast Guard Point is going to have to be something that is also talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we mentioned things like Fisherman's Picnic and the Art Festival and what that might mean to those community, festivals that close down the streets, because part of the downtown is the part of Wisconsin Street is the way to get around the construction that's over at the kind of the highway by the cobblestone building during that period of time. And the only other alternative is to completely block off the downtown from access, and means everybody has to come from up above Highway 61, either walk across, or, I mean, it's very disruptive, so, those community events, we're gonna have to, think about too, and how they.
Might not be the year to have an event every weekend.
Or they may have to look at different street locations for how that might be done too. Yeah, I mean, it's very complicated, and it's going to be difficult. The Fisherman's Picnic, they're suggesting that they would have the work done on Highway 61, so they wouldn't have to reroute traffic through the downtown. They would say they're going to finish that work by July 31st. Yeah. Okay. Well.
Weather dependent. And
Yes. Yeah. So,
Well,
stay tuned. November 7th for
Stay
sure. Show up and
So, and if you don't show up, because we don't expect most people will, we'll be there, making sure that there's a good record of it that we can share with folks.
And what time is that at?
Well, it's not
We'll
scheduled
figure it
yet.
out.
Oh, okay.
Unknown.
Tentative date.
Whenever they tell us they'll be there. Okay, is that all?
we had an active living steering committee meeting too. Probably the biggest thing about that is that, I know you may not know, maybe you do, that Maren Webb is leaving the community. Maren has been the coordinator for the active living, the Blue Cross grant. She's going to be missed. She's done a great job facilitating all the work that's gone on with active living. Not sure how that's going to transition, but I guess we'll find out. It's been a project that the city has seen, I think, a lot of benefits from. I mean, the Highway 61 project came as a direct result of the initial work that that group had done,
Is that grant renewed? Because that was a grant, right? Through
grant.
the SHIP grant?
Well, the SHIP grant.
SHIP is different.
Yeah, SHIP, the funding will
The Blue-
continue most likely. The
The
Blue Cross money
grant
is the real
is-
grant.
Question.
Is done.
And it's done at the end of the year.
But they can reapply. But the question is, who, how.
The folks from Blue Cross were here
Yes.
that week, and they encouraged us to look their way when they have funding opportunity again, because I think they're very impressed with the things that have been going on here and the community involvement in it. And they also shared that a lot of other communities look at the things that are going on here, that funding has helped, and that the community's been involved in. And it's kind of nice. I hope that people that are working on those projects get that feedback and know.
Yeah. Brian Anderson from MnDOT was also at that meeting too, talked a little bit about the alternative transportation money that is going to be available, in fact, is available right now. So, again, it's,
For 2023,
yeah.
which is pretty soon, if you look at our list of stuff.
Yep, it's right on there. Anything else, Tim?
We had a pedestrian plan meeting too. Mike and Patrick had worked to generate a map. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's there are maps around town that people put pins on. This kind of represents the pins that were placed. This is probably a better depiction of that map. It shows it's kind of heat sensitive to the concentration of the pins that were placed. This is the downtown area, then this is the kind of community as a whole. There were a lot of comments received. What was it, 78 comments, something along those lines?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
Pretty close.
A lot of good comments, constructive,
Can we get a copy of that?
Yeah, they'll
Did
have
we?
a draft plan for you. No one has a copy of that outside of that group yet, but you can certainly have one.
secret plan I just showed you. Get
Yeah.
close to.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to work on this and try to bring, bring more information into the process, but, yeah,
Anything else?
that's it.
Until you remember something else. Anton?
I'm done.
PDA yesterday, and we had kind of updates on Spear National. They will looks like, depending on how October's gone, it hasn't been great so far. But they're going to be right there with the budgeted rounds that we had for the course, which is pretty good.
No, the budgeted rounds for the course, which was the elevated budgeted rounds for the course.
Yeah, it went back. I think last year we had it down at 10,000, and this year it was up at 12,000. And last year we pretty sure we missed the 10,000. Of course, they were only operating 18 and 27 holes. But this year they had the big kickoff, which is why there was extra funding out there for advertising. So we also had an update from Giant Voices, is who the Physical County worked with in more outreach and publications, golf publications on TV stations and radio stations in both Duluth and Thunder Bay and down in the Twin Cities. So we got some of that feedback, or the what's the word, the numbers back on that, like
Analytics.
analytics. That's the word. So that was interesting. And then looking at, of course, that budget was raised mostly because of the wanted to make the push to make the grand reopening of all 27 holes more successful, and the budget for the EDA for this year is pared down for the advertising side, back down to a more, well, it's not it's half of what it was last year, I guess. But we're hoping that, I think we budgeted 12,000, and I think we'll just be over, because I think they said they had 178 rounds for that, the North Shore
Healthcare Foundation tournament.
I think it was 170, 138, 170. It was,
In the rain, beautiful day for it.
yeah.
Freezing cold. So they're gonna be just over 12,000 rounds for the year, they think?
Really?
Well, it depends on how the rest of October goes.
Right.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Kelly?
The budgeted rounds were around 12,000 and they're,
It was 12,000 is what the number, it was a
Okay.
flat number of 12,000.
And they're
I
pretty
think
close
that's
to
all-
that.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
if, through September, so not including that, and there was some other number that wasn't included in there, like some other, I don't know, maybe what it was, if it was there was something else that was a pretty decent size. Oh, they actually hadn't included the grand opening. There was, almost 100 rounds that were played, and I think they were sitting at like 10 or 11,000 something.
it's
It was good. It was real close. So that's
Yes,
good.
I remember
Yeah, and
feeling
Mother
some
Nature's not
trepidation
helping 'em.
about that.
So that was good news.
Got some more houses.
Yeah, there's more houses over in town, which is good. Apparently, up from the update we'd gotten at last month's meeting was that the cranes were going to leave the Grand Marais project and head right to Lutzen and set the units in Lutzen. And now the buildings for Lutzen are being produced. I don't know if there's a crane sitting there waiting to set them or not, but they're still, I think they told us in the September meeting that occupancy was going to be right end of October was when they're hoping to get people in, but being as it's the first week of October and they don't have buildings on site yet, I think that's probably not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that it won't happen yet this fall, especially if things dry out and they don't run into the same roadway restrictions that they had, which was what held up the Grand Marais project. But the occupancy over in the Grand Marais homes they're sold and people are living in there, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Which is good that it's working.
So the first four homes are sold?
Yes,
And the
from what
second four are still on the market, or are they committed?
I know that they had a large list of people that had applied. So I think that they were waiting until they actually got to the point of where they could be occupied to figure out who was going to go where. So they're not sold as far as I understand. The new ones.
The completion date for those homes,
They're putting the last of the siding and stuff on now. So everybody's been screwed up by the rain, but
I saw the crane pull out last week, so.
yeah. I made the mistake of driving to the end of 2nd Street that day and then getting stuck behind that crane while they were jockeying around. But let's see. Other EDA stuff. I think that's, I'll probably think of something once Jonathan starts talking, but, I wanna know, I'd like to know, did letters go out about campers, RVs? Okay. And then, this meeting that's on our packet, the end of our packet, is that the meeting that we talk about the YMCA?
Nope.
No,
That's a different
We
joint
need to
powers
schedule
meeting.
it's not scheduled yet.
Can we schedule that?
Mm-hmm. I was planning on bringing that up.
Okay, good. Because that would be, I don't get a lot of input. I don't know, it depends, I guess. Depends on what day and how many people I run into. But that's one big thing that I've gotten a lot of questions about. And I'd like to be able to give a little bit more definitive answer on my stance on it. I have an opinion, but of course, without having information, everything in front of me, it's hard for me to pound my fist on the table, yes or no. Anyway, that's it. I'll be done. Please stop raining.
Okay, Jonathan.
As of the end of September, the rec park revenue is up 4.8%. The month of September is down a little bit, but that's just because of our increased booking fees or registration fees. The Sweethearts Bluff lower shelter has been taken down. The upper one's going next, and October 21st and 22nd is the timber raising. It's hoped to be kind of a community event, so if anyone is interested, on North House's website, they can go and partake in that. We're going to be really, really appreciative of them putting that up, and I think it's going to make that place look pretty cool. The golf course September revenue is down 34% compared to last year. There was four days closed to rain and a couple for aeration. But we've started to look at kind of some of the greens fees numbers to go with our discussion. And we've seen this summer 3,500 rounds of golf. About 3/4 of that was played by members. There's 69 members. 21 of those members are Grand Marais residents. So 38 are Cook County residents and 10 are unknown or seasonal. So we're kind of getting some data that if we want to look at how these costs are spread, we have some numbers to really kind of get put behind that.
Are those numbers, do you think they'll be reflected in the board minutes so that we'll have them?
Yep, and I believe Dave gave them to the newspaper as well.
And we'll also prepare that for the joint meeting with the park board that we'll be holding to talk about the golf course specifically. So we'll try to get all that information in the packet before the meeting for you to be able to review.
Perfect.
Yep. And then the other thing was last Thursday, the park board, we met with CJ Hernandez to go through the Community Connection project and the campground monument sign, as how that is contained in the 61 project. In general, the park board was pretty happy with the Community Connection design and the budget for it as it currently sits. People could seem like stomach that. I think we're wanting CJ or any architect to kind of take another look at the monument sign project and see if there's things we could trim off there, just as far as what type of programming that monument sign functions for. Just not quite sure if that's in the right ballpark of kind of cost that we think that it would do what it's supposed to do. So, let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
All right, Kelly?
YMCA, I am on the finance committee for that. As a board member, you either go with finance or membership. I'm on the finance side. We meet this coming Monday at 5:30. So I expect that at our next board meeting, I will have some information to share with all of you. and plan to try to remember to ask as many questions and clarify as much as I can so I can come back to all of you with it and help you with that. Another thing is to say thank you for adding minutes into the packets.
Yeah.
I find that very helpful. I find it's, no offense to anybody, but I think that's almost more helpful to me to read things than to hear it here, because I can't write everything down that you're saying as quickly. This works really well for me. And if people ask questions, I have something concrete to go back to give them information. Wanted to know if after the last meeting, I just want to bring it up as we said we'd continue to discuss what people are hearing on North House, if people have had much feedback at all. I've had 2 emails. I know I opened myself up at the meeting to tell people. I've had 2. I don't know if anybody else here has had much anything.
I've had no emails and no phone calls, but conversations.
Okay. I had one really, I think actually the person sent it to all of us, one really well-written letter that I need to respond back to him and thank him because it was very well done, very respectful, and very well thought out. So I wanted to comment to him about that and thank that person. Also, just as we talked about how we're going to go about working on some of these things, both planning and zoning, what we task you with, our ordinances, what we task with. I'm wondering if we could talk about it further, whether we need to, and I know it means more money for us, is do we need to hire another person, half-time person, full-time, 3/4, 2/3, whatever it may be, in City Hall to help with some of these things? If there's an overload, because I think there's things that really need to be moved forward and worked with. And if the public's pushing us to answer some of these questions and follow ordinances that are already in place, and it's our job to do that, then how do we best do that? Maybe it's a discussion for another day. And then, are we anywhere further with the employee insurance update?
Okay.
Is that coming?
Which one should we start first?
Right down
I
the
know.
line.
Well, see, I don't have the old stuff here, so that's in my
the
head.
employee insurance update, the employees met with the gentleman that had all the information about
Yep.
the plan. There were some issues that were brought up that are worth further discussion on our part, but are
Okay.
that I think we'll be able to easily solve. And I just want to talk to you two after the meeting to do some scheduling for
Wonderful.
personnel committee to button that up. And our hope
Okay.
is that it'll be done and on your agenda for approval at the next meeting.
So that could help with some numbers going forward. Yay.
Certainly could.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
Let's
Hey.
talk a little bit about that other thing, that whole, hey, staffing, what's going on, are we getting enough done? And do we have enough resources to do all the things that you're expecting to be done? We should, if we could wait until, say, the end of the year or the beginning of the year, I think that's a great kind of background topic for a strategic planning session where we can start by revisiting the, hey, what did we ask to get done? What's been done? What do we think is going to happen next year? Do a little prioritization, talk about resources, and figure out whether they match up or not, if
Do
that
we-
makes sense.
Do we want to, and I agree with that, especially if there's any turnover here. But my question would be then, does it make sense to, if it is like, oh, we should hire somebody at some capacity to help out with what the requests are, just making sure that there's dollars, of course, because we have to decide the budget.
That was
Or to
my
the end of
thought,
the year.
budget time.
You know,
Yeah.
and, you know, if we know, yeah, I don't know.
So the preliminary levy is what it is.
Right, I know that, but we
So now
also
you've
plan
got-
on dropping that.
But you talked about dropping that.
Right.
You don't have to decide on that until the end of December. So if we had a chance in even November to come back and do some strategic planning after we know who's going to be here and who's not, and then we can talk about that in a timely enough manner to deal with it and
Yeah.
give you a chance to do the budget.
I could see, I mean, I guess for me, I would say that if things change that, well, I don't know, I mean, I don't know where you set that bar. If it's everybody knew, obviously, then it makes sense to just probably wait to just pass the budget as it is and, or not as it is, but make the changes we feel is best and then let a new strategic planning meeting happen with whoever the new folks would be. But it seems like if this group stayed, that there would be an opportunity to maybe push the schedule forward and do a meeting prior to having to set the levy. That's, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
That
I
would-
think
Yep.
I think it makes sense for us to plan to be spending some money on strategic planning. Then it sounds like
Well, I don't think it's going to take much money
Money.
for us to do
just
strategic
time.
planning.
Time.
Your time in particular.
Ha.
Time.
My time actually, less. I think I've got that ready to go when you want it to. You know, the question's going to be when are the 5 of you going to be available? But I think we should probably let that
Yeah.
play out in November and December first.
Okay.
You know, and I think it's really relevant because, you know, I mean, we have a lot of big projects that we know are gonna happen. They're not, they're, regardless of who's sitting at the table here, those projects are gonna happen, and we need, I mean, you're gonna be spending a lot of time with those, you know, I mean, city staff are gonna be spending. We've got the highway projects gonna involve huge utility relocations and issues there. The PUC is gonna be involved. We've got the Coast Guard, the boat launch ramp facility and that, you know, so we've got some big things that are gonna happen irregardless, and, you know, the things that keep getting added on, that get pushed to the side because we have these things that are already scheduled need to get addressed. So, I mean, I think what you're bringing up is really relevant, and I think no matter who's sitting at the table, you know, they still have to be addressed and figure out how we're gonna deal with that.
Yeah. Okay. That was
Anything else?
one other. To add to your plate, I know we've talked about it. It was on the old, but just the audit, some audit answers.
Yep. So we've already met to go over some preliminary, just in-staff conversations about what's going on here, how are we going to respond to these things, and
Okay.
we're looking at the next meeting to
Okay.
come back with an answer.
Perfect. That's awesome. That's all I
Yeah.
need to.
Well, I was hoping we could do it this meeting because the next meeting's got a whole lot of things we were hoping to put on the agenda now. And this one didn't have quite as many, but, you know, it turned out okay.
Yeah, and where are we at now? So,
Yep.
I know. All right,
Can always
thanks,
surprise you.
guys. I know. There's a lot.
All right, so last Friday, we had the Minnesota Association of Small Cities, of which we're a member. Their board was up in Grand Marais, and we're actually having one of their meetings here. So Mike and I came and did a little hello for them and told them some of the issues that we are going to be struggling with or are struggling with, and urged them to help us. I would encourage you to take a look at their website and see what their legislative policies are. What they were going to do is they were setting their legislative agenda for 2019. So you know, they do a lot of the things that are on their webpage are things that we have talked about: workforce housing, rural health care, workforce shortages, water quality, broadband. You know, these are things that we've talked about. So it might be interesting for you just to read what they're up to. Like Tim mentioned, I was at that Highway 61 meeting. There were trade-offs for every single one of the staging plans that we had, and we tried to protect the businesses as much as we possibly could from disruption. So I feel good about that, and I have been having a lot of communication with people around town about developments, like about potential development in the future, and how, you know, if we need all of these housing developments, how can we do that and maintain the nature of the city? And I think that that's going to be a more relevant conversation that we're going to have to put into policy here pretty soon. So, other than that, that's pretty much all the meetings that I had.
Housing developments meaning expanded homes or apartment buildings?
Just meaning, how are we going to meet the housing demand? How are we going to meet our shortfalls? And I think innovation is that we've, you know, everything on the table. I've been contacting other small isolated communities that I know have plans. A bunch of them out west, some of them out east, some of them in the Midwest. Not as many in the Midwest that have that same isolation factor that we have, and that actually have a tourism economy or actually have a robust economy itself. And I've been actually hearing back from a lot of them. And people are saying, yeah, we'd love to talk about it. So hopefully I can gather some more ideas about that as well. So, here we go. Do you have anything?
A big thank you to our utility and other staff
Oh gosh, yes.
Definitely.
for all the work that they had to put in last week. It was
A mess.
it was a real mess. Yeah, they got called in at 11 p.m. and worked 16 hours, and we had to kick them out. We could, they would have kept going, but can't have that just for safety reasons. So thank you for all the folks out there that were patient about getting your repairs done. Our 2 line workers were joined by many of our other staff to help them out for a couple of really long days and some not super fun weather. And office staff kept very busy with the communications, and I think it actually went really smoothly. We didn't have any incidents, and everything got fixed as far as we know. If we're wrong about that, please let us know, because there could still be a thing or two out there where somebody hasn't found it yet, but it went well, and thanks everybody. And I'll be at the SIMPA meeting tomorrow and Friday in Bloomington, where they'll be talking about rates for next year and some other conference type speakers, which is always a good event that they put on, but it's going to help us. We'll be ready to talk November about rates at the Utility Commission.
Okay.
So
Cool. Anything else?
Hopefully you get through downtown Duluth and the water has receded from the tunnels,
Yeah.
or be prepared to go around.
I'll just have to
Sounds
go around.
like
Yeah, it
madness.
sounds like it
Or
might
bring
be
your boat.
crazy.
Anything else? Okay, right at 8:30 we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.